Hey, it's Andy Yanez, and you're listening to another episode of Let's Rage Coogs, presented by the Fritz Kennel. On this episode of Let's Rage Coogs, we're going to be discussing all things. We're going to be talking all things Houston and St. Joseph's. A strong win for Houston as they now improve to 2-0 on the young season. They finish the game, the victory 81-55 over St. Joseph's. A lot of good and interesting game that ended up to have a lot of condensation stoppage throughout the game. Which is something I had never seen before. And interesting, Kevin Sampson postgame said that the game came really close to being postponed due to those conditions. But obviously, a strong performance. Really, the two players of the game, Jarvis Walker and Jawan Roberts, those two, particularly on the offensive side of things, were the players of the game for Houston. On that note, we'll add in our third member for today's episode of Let's Rage Coops, Chris Gardner of the Houston Round Ball Review. Chris, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. Excuse my tardiness, guys, but wanted to mop up some of the condensation on my floor.
Hey, no worries. I also had to deal with condensation and issues and stuff like that. But regardless, Dan, I'm gonna toss it over to you. What did you think overall, just from Jarvis Walker and Jawan Roberts?
Those two play really well, dominating force. They really complement each other well as well with Jared's versatility offensively and J1's just energy in the way he plays the game. I just really could tell with him being playing more time on the court, you could just tell he's been in the gym working on his game. And so I think those two really played well. All started on the defensive end, of course. They really dominated the paint.
Chris, what were your main takeaways from this win?
It was good to see them. They scored 81 points, and Marcus Sasser was 2 for 9 from the floor.
Yeah.
And he had turnovers, but Sasser and Shed combined for 13 assists. So they did it different ways. And the front court, Juan and Jarvis Walker can't come through with points production. I think this team will win games a lot of different ways this season, and that's the sign of a very good team. Front court get it done sometimes, backcourt some other times. Ramon Walker came in and did what Ramon Walker does. So good team win. Bill Wagner, the Navy beat writer, tweeted out that the court was new, so that might have been part of the issues with all the slips. And plus, there were players diving on the floor almost every possession. So that added to whatever issues that the court had by design. So I was glad to see the staffs get involved with using towels to dry the floor off for St. Joe's and UH. So, do what you got to do to finish the game.
Yeah, there were multiple times. I tweeted about it. You saw Alan Bishop, Kellen Hutchinson. Really, I think it was like 4 or 5 different members of the Houston staff that were, they had to run on the other side of the court to be able to drive off. That's kind of funny and unique because you don't see that every day. But Chris, I'm gonna toss it over back to you. It's kind of the same question I asked Dayon. But what were your thoughts on Jarvis Walker and Jawan Roberts?
Jarvis bounced back. I guess I'm full screen. What happened to Dayon? I don't know what happened there. I'm gonna bring you back. There we go. Maybe Andy just wanted. I don't know what happened there. But anyway, it's live streaming. That's what we do here on Let's Rage Coogs. So just adjust on the fly. But Jarvis Walker bounced back from a 3 for 14 performance in his first game. He scored inside, scored outside. He did a little bit of everything to show why he is a highly ranked recruit. He had some issues, some lapses on defense, which I'm sure Coach Kevin Sampson and the staff will point out in the film room, the video room, where he made some mistakes and didn't hustle and things like that. But second game of his freshman career, we saw flashes of what he can do when he's locked in and focused. And we also saw flashes of areas of what he needs to improve as a freshman needs to do and will do.
Really see his versatility offensively, though. Yeah. His ability not only to shoot the basketball, but just to handle it, score from mid-range. His
floater.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. He's really, really versatile. Really leaps and bounds it from where Fabian was when he was a freshman. We know what he developed into, but come in as a freshman, and he has supreme athleticism to go along with that skill set. So, yeah, he's nice.
As we saw in the alley-oop one-hand jam he had.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, the other player I was talking about, Juwan Roberts, I think he showed some of his versatility offensively with a lot of. This is the most active I've seen him just in terms of offensively. He showed a couple of different moves. I know he had a nice post hook shot in the first half. Just overall being able to be that type of cleaner on the glass, get rebounds. He had a big, I don't know if you could call him a momentum play, but it certainly stopped the bleeding for a moment. I think St. Joseph's had cut it. I think that might have been the closest they got in the second half, where they cut it to 14. Jamal Shed missed the three. Juwan Roberts got the rebound. And he converted on the layup. He also had the end one, and he finished with the free throw, which pushed the lead back up to 17. I thought that was a huge play. And just overall throughout, this is arguably, probably, I mean, not even arguably, this is probably the best game we've seen from Juwan Roberts overall during his time in Houston. He also had 12 rebounds for the double-double.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's more comfortable in the offense. He's more comfortable as a leader. He and Jairus are roommates, as they've told us in post-practice media sessions. They work out together after practice, so they're getting iron sharpens iron. So I think Jairus' skill set is helping Juan get better. So a lot of positive, and the biggest positive really for me is none of the Cougs got hurt.
Yeah,
for all the issues with the court, nobody got injured.
Along with everything else you mentioned, Chris, he knows he's dependent upon. He knows he's going to play a lot of minutes. Everything we would see in him from years past would be in a sample size. It would be in spurts. We would see him dominating, but he wouldn't really get as many touches. He wouldn't just be dependent upon to produce as much as he is this year, and he's definitely stepping up to the plate.
And Reggie Chaney's healthy, as that slam dunk showed. Man, that was a nice slam dunk. Even the basket before the end of the first half, and he raced down the floor and got that layup. I won't mention his free throw shooting, but the dunk and the layup were nice. But the front court played well, and the backcourt did not shoot well, and Houston still won by 26.
Yeah, that was you literally read my mind where I was going to steer the conversation next. Jamal Shed, Marcus Sasser, they didn't have, at least when it comes to a points perspective, shooting wise, they combined shot for 4 for 19. They combined for 11 points. But again, kind of sticking with Jamal Shed, once again, he followed up his strong performance as a facilitator in game 1 against Northern Colorado. He did it again. He had 8 assists. He only had 1 turnover throughout the night. I think he was really a calming factor for Houston on offense, being able to set up. Especially with St. Joseph's in the second half, they were running a whole bunch of. It seemed like they threw everything at Houston when it came defensively. There were times where they had full court pressure. They were trapping. Sometimes they moved it to just a half court pressure, and then even zone. That even at the end of the first half, it really ruined Houston's flow, because really they were killing the Hawks in transition early on in the first half. They were getting a lot of fast break points. I think they had 16 fast break points in the first half. When they went into the zone, it kind of made Houston start to take a lot more 3-pointers, which at times you could see Kelvin Sampson on the sidelines. I don't think he was happy with it. A lot of the threes that they were settling for, and it really kind of changed the way that game was going for Houston offensively. But Jamal Shed, again, continues to be that facilitator that, Dan, I know you said in the past, is something that he does at an elite level.
And then he had a great game. He really, really had a great game outside of the way he's shooting the basketball, but he impacted the game the way a point guard, I don't want to say should, because typical days they have a lot of point guards score the basketball more from a traditional point guard perspective, CP3 mode, the way Coach Sampson likes his point guard. And while I was watching that game, I was just thinking about how Houston's recent success, it's been great point guard play. And not only scoring, but just the way that they control the tempo of the game, getting others involved, not turning over, the way they hit the defense. And so, man, I was just very, very impressed with his basketball IQ. A lot of times he made skip passes over the zone, getting people wide open looks. And Jamal is a really, really, really good point guard. And I think he's going to be at Houston at least for a couple more years for sure. So, man, I'm very, very impressed with Jamal Shed and the way he plays the game, the way he attacks the game, the way he sees the game. He's a really, really good point guard.
And St. Joe's, the Cougs had, for most of the first half, 0 turnovers. How rare is that? They finished the first half with 1, and then they
that one came on a play just because Emmanuel Sharp stepped out of bounds on a 3-pointer.
Right.
It wasn't even a.
That's it. And then the second half, It could have been disinterest, lack of focus, whatever. They had 8 turnovers. So,
and I think you got to give a lot of credit to St. Joseph's too.
Yeah, that's what I
Being
was
able to
Yeah.
switch around the defense, that gave them a lot of
Yeah.
problems. Even just, it always seemed like they had to figure out what that adjustment St. Joseph had made, and it really at times it just got Houston a different flow offensively. And I mean, even to think about, I think there was one point where they went on the full court press, and Tremont Mark got trapped, and he threw it straight to the referee, and it went out of bounds. Just stuff like that. It really, I wouldn't say it caught Houston off guard. It was just something that they had to adjust to, and it took them a while.
Yeah, say Joe, they played really hard in the second half. I don't
Yeah.
think the Guards were disinterested. I seen King Jaja's comment. I don't think that at all. I just think the second half they played really hard. They made adjustments, and the way the game was going, the Guards didn't force anything. As good as Marcus is, what makes him even better is he doesn't force shots. He lets the game come to him, and that goes along with Jamal. He never forced a shot as well, and so they continue to play within the system, and they just let whoever's hot, they let them eat, and they just move the basketball, and they all feed off well. Another thing that I noticed too is they played with the same intensity Coach Sampson coaches with on the sideline. You see him, he's intense, and they play with that same intensity starting on the defensive end. And every possession on defensively, you have to really offensively for the opposing team focus on moving the basketball and really executing, because 9 times out of 10 you're not going to get an offensive rebound. They got a couple offensive rebounds, but the majority of the game you're not going to get an offensive rebound against Houston. So you really have to execute. And Houston doesn't have defensive laps, whether there's rotations, getting hands on the ball. They all are on one accord and all in sync with one another. And so I'm very impressed with this team so far from what I've seen.
And to you guys' credit, giving St. Joe's credit, it was 41-40 on the boards.
Mm-hmm.
St. Joseph had more offensive boards than Houston in the game. How often will we say that this season?
No.
Not a lot. So that will be a point of emphasis for Coach Sampson, I'm sure. Despite winning by 26 points, he's going to hammer that point home. So that's what makes this program great. They hang their hat on specific things, and if they didn't live up to those expectations, they'll work to correct it.
One of the other things, so Marcus Sasser, we touched on the backcourt. What did you guys see from him overall? He 1 for 6 3-point shooting. That's not something that we're going to worry about, but he had 5 assists. He did have 3 turnovers. Just over your thoughts on his performance. Dan, I'll toss it over to you first.
He made some good decisions in the pick and roll. I like the way his decision making in the pick and roll. Again, I like how he didn't force shots, got out to a good start, which I think jump started the team. Then he just kind of let the game play itself out. Good ball handling. I was impressed with Marcus as well, especially on the defensive end, the way he attacks on the defensive end. And so I think overall he had a good game as well, despite what the numbers say. You look at the way he impacted the game offensively, and then all the eyes. He's going to draw so much attention. I think that opens up, and he's aware how much that opens up the floor from everyone else. And he did a good job of moving that. He had a lot of hockey assists tonight where his pass didn't lead to the assist, but he made one pass, and that pass led to another pass, which led to a bucket. And so I was very impressed with Marcus's game tonight.
Yeah, it was as if the game plan for the Hawks was to not make Marcus Sasser beat us. So they tossed 2-3 guys at him and made other players for the Cougs beat them, and Rage Walker and Ramon Walker did that. So I think it's another example, indication of the versatility of this team, the balance of this team going forward. Again, Marcus Sasser did not score a lot of points, and Houston still scored 81 points and only shot 5 for 26 from the 3 and still won by 26 points.
Yeah, I think a lot of teams will play zone against Houston. That's the way that I'm seeing the first games. Yeah, they're going to play zone against Houston. But one player we haven't talked about, which I'm sure I'll let Andy get to, was Tremont.
Yeah, no, exactly, Dan. You read my mind because he was going to be the next player I went to. And I think for Tremont overall, the thing that stood out to me was just how he was rebounding. I think there was one point in specifically, or one that is still stuck in my head that I remember vividly. Because he was in the corner. He was open for 3. Rage Walker was kind of cutting into the paint. He decided to take a mid-range shot, and Tremont Mark went from I'm open for shots. Immediately when he saw that Walker was going to shoot, he cut in, got into the paint, got into the middle of the paint, lo and behold, the ball bounced off the rim and it went straight to Tremont Mark. Now, he didn't necessarily come up with the rebound, but the ball, he was certainly fighting for it. The ball was loose, and then it led to a loose ball situation. It was a jump ball, and Houston had possession, so it gave them an extra possession. I think that's something that's been underrated so far in the season with Tremont Mark, something that both of you guys know. Kelvin Sampson said multiple times leading up to the game, or leading up to the season, making plays that impact winning. That right there, that bought Houston an extra possession. And overall for the game, he finished with 6 rebounds. 5 of them were defensive rebounds. So that's something, even if he's not necessarily scoring, which we know he can do on any given night, that's something where for the first 2 games, he's found a way to make an impact.
I think Tremont, again, echoed what Deion said after the first game. Will be the guard who rebounding guard. He had 6 boards tonight. I think he's going to fit that role this season. Yep. And, I mean, every year it's somebody in the backcourt wing spot that will crash the boards. And this season, it looks like Tremont Mark will be that guy.
Yep. Not only that, I'm loving with the intensity he's playing with, too. He looked like he's everywhere on the court. And his length, he's getting tips, loose balls. But offensively, he was efficient today. 5 of 9. His mid-range jumper is pretty much automatic. And that's what I wanted to see this game when they would go against man-to-man, was his ability to get inside and finish in that mid-range, in which he did a good job of doing that. Didn't make his threes, but he didn't settle for threes once what they weren't dropping. He was getting inside and making his mid-range jump shot. And so I was very, very impressed with Tremont as well.
And the three-point shooting, zone defense that I think other teams will toss at the Cougs this season. The more they see it, the better they'll get at it. Okay, They don't practice against it, as we hear all the time.
What did Sampson said the last year? They had only seen it once.
Yeah, they practiced one day, and I think that was Sunday before they faced Northern Colorado. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that was different look zones, triangle and 2, things like that. But Marcus Sasser from 3, 1 for 6. Jamal Shedd 0 for 5. T. Mark 0 for 3. Not gonna be too many games where they combine and go 1 for 14 from 3, okay, against zone. So teams, the more the Cougs see it, teams can play that zone and try their luck, and then see how many times the Cougs will go 1 for 14 from 3. But then if they miss it, Coach Sampson says, we don't care if you miss, we'll just go get the board and beat you that way. So we'll see how it all plays out. I'm just going back to a point I think we're going to say a lot this season, is this team will beat opponents different ways, based on matchups, personnel. I mean, it's hard to get overhyped after 2 games, but we can see the potential that this team has.
Absolutely. And I think, I'll put a pin on it, because first I have to give a shout out to our sponsor for today's Let's Rage Coogs, the Fritz Kennel. Make sure you go out, and if you ever have, you need a space to be able to drop off your furry friend, whether it is you're going out of town or anything, be sure to look up our guys at the Fritz Kennel. Make sure if you ever want to contact them, you can do so at 713-464-9852. Fritz Kennel. Huge thanks to them for being a sponsor of Let's Rage Coogs, following Houston's 81-55 victory over St. Joseph's in the Veterans Classic. Now, the thing I was going to say, Chris, the interesting thing about that, you just mentioned it. Marcus Sasser, Jamal Shedd, Tremont Mark, they combined. Tremont Mark had a decent shooting night, but Shedd, Sasser in particular, didn't have a good shooting night. Houston, in particular in the second half, they I wouldn't say they had a turnover bug or anything like that, but they were stopped a bit when it came to turning over the ball. They had eight turnovers in the second half. And again, like we mentioned, they still ended up winning by 26 points. And like you said, the more teams give zone looks, the better they're going to get at as the season progresses. And I know you said you can't be that excited after just 2 games, but I mean, just hearing that's incredible. And Marcus Sasser, he was picked in the preseason Associated Press all team in the entire country. He's obviously picked to be the American Athletic Conference Player of the Year and by the coaches in the conference. And it showed that Houston doesn't necessarily need him to be on it day in and day out for Houston to win, and not only win big.
Yeah, and that's a beauty of this team. Marcus Sasser is the veteran leader of this team. By season's end, he may not be this team's best player.
Whoa.
You know, he may not. He may not be the team's best player. He may not. That might be Jarris Walker. And come March, that might be Jarris Walker be the best player on this team. But even if it's 1A, 1B, think about that. Okay, both guys are considered first-round draft picks.
Yeah.
You know, that's the kind of versatility that this team could possess going forward in this season. Marcus Sasser had an off game today by his standards, and Houston still scored 81 points. Despite shooting 5 for 26 from 3, they still scored 81 points.
Yeah. And we also got to keep in mind the team that they're going against in the talent as far as the front court and being able to dominate a team doesn't really have front court talent as good as they'll see. I think against some of the upper echelon talent that they'll see, I can't see Houston being as winning games with Marcus Sasser shooting how he shot today. I still think he had a good game, despite what the numbers say. I don't look at numbers to see if they had a good game, but I think as the talent and the teams they get better, they'll need to depend on him more and more. But yeah, for sure, I think the team definitely will beat you in different ways, whether he scores 5 points, 10 points, however many points. That doesn't matter. I think he'll impact the game in different ways for sure.
And that's the beauty of this team. If the staff says, Marcus, we need you to take over, he can do it. Yeah. But that may not be needed a lot this season. And how many times will that be the case in conference play? This last year in the American, there's not a lot of great teams in the American this season. So this is not the Big 12, okay? So let's be honest with that. The tougher competition overall for the Cougars will be in non-conference, not in the AAC. I'm not saying they're going to go undefeated, okay?
Memphis is good. Tulane is going to be good. It's only a couple games in the non-conference that's good when you compare it to the conference schedule. Oregon is all right, but they're not better than Memphis. They don't got talent like Memphis guys.
Memphis has 5 old heads.
That's talent, though. I don't care how old you are.
How much talent do they have? Really?
Really, they got talent.
Out of the 5 of them, how much talent do they have?
Talent, a lot of talent, a lot of talent.
Besides Kendrick Davis,
talent,
and 1.
Okay,
and DeAndre Williams, that's 2. Give me the other 3.
Dandruff.
I said how many? How many out of the 5?
Their center, that's talent. Lomax, he got talent. Let me pull up their roster.
It's not as good as this team. Memphis has more experience.
This team, but
it has more experience now than they've had talent.
It's more talent than what they'll see in the non-conference. That's the point.
No, the difference for them is they have experience now. They've had more talented teams previously.
And talent. Well, we're not talking about what they had previously. What we're saying was they will face more talent in conference than what they're facing in their non-conference schedule. Kendrick Davis, Alex Lomax, Lawson is good. Both Lawson. DeAndre Williams is good. Dandruff, the big body, he's good. Yeah, they're
better than Alabama, Virginia, and Oregon.
They're better than Virginia. I gotta see Alabama. See Alabama.
The polls say different.
I don't look at the polls. I know my eye test team I seen what Virginia has. They bring the same team they bring back last year. Same team. I seen it with my eyes. I know basketball.
But the difference is Memphis is different. It's not the same team. He's starting 5 different guys this year because they're veterans. Penny's going a different route this year because he realized that youth was not getting it done for him to get to the NCAA tournament.
That's smart.
Right. But we haven't seen them mesh together as a team yet.
That's an interesting question to pose. And I'm curious to get for some of the viewers that are watching the comments. Who would be it was an argument that Memphis would be the toughest, or what was it, that Houston won't see anyone as tough? The toughest opponent will come from the non-conference schedule, essentially, than anyone from the American Athletic Conference. That was the question, correct?
No, I didn't say anyone from the American Athletic Conference. I said overall. Overall, the conference is down like it has been the last 2 years. American is not the Big 12.
It's not the Big 12.
There are eight Big 12 tournament teams, NCAA tournament teams in the Big 12. There might be two in the American.
Let's list their non-conference schedule. Northern Colorado, St. Joseph, Oral Roberts, Texas Southern, Oregon, Kent State, Norfolk State, St. Mary's, North Florida, Alabama, Virginia, North Carolina A&T, McNeese. So you mean to tell me that those teams I mentioned don't have more talent than the teams in the conference? I can give you Oregon is arguable, Oregon, and probably Virginia and Alabama, but the rest of those
Okay,
teams
that's three. That's
teams.
Three teams.
You
How
wanna
many?
bet-
How many
Okay,
teams in the American?
have more talent in those 3 teams.
Yes.
3 teams, but you said overall, that's more than
more than 3. Yeah, more than 3. Yeah.
Okay.
How many?
How low though? But overall, we got to take it overall, right? You said that there's more, not as many. So out of how many games is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. 3 out of 13 teams are, in my opinion, have some good talent. And so looking at that, more talent than some of those teams, 3 of those teams you can argue. SMU got some talent. Tulane got some talent.
That talent's in Memphis now.
You talking about 2 players. You don't think the players are there because they have talent at SMU? You don't think the players at SMU have more talent than the players that McNeese State,
Virginia, Alabama, and Oregon?
But you're relying on 3 teams. That's 3 out of 13. Your comment was that they will not face as much talent in the non-conference schedule. Not all just 3 of those games. It's 13 games out of now you picking back on 3 games, 3 teams. You catch the drift of what you said? You said it. I didn't say it.
I stand by.
All right.
More talented. Those 3 teams have more talent than anybody in the American. Other 3 teams, yes.
We'll put a pin on it there. We'll segue there. Here on Let's Rage Coogs, it kind of segued into first take there for a little bit. I loved it. I love the fire between both of you guys. But one final note I did want to make in regards to Houston and St. Joseph's, and this was in particular the first half, and this was how strong Houston started the game out defensively overall against. Honestly, they were suffocating St. Joseph's. There was a point right there when Houston jumped out to. I guess they jumped out to the game on a 34-11 run. Where really it didn't seem like the Hawks could get anything going on offense. They were turning it over left and right, which was one of the big reasons why Houston was excelling in transition. Like I mentioned earlier in the show, they had 16 fast break points overall in the first half. St. Joseph committed 10 turnovers, which they were able to clean up a little bit in the second half. But again, going back, we kind of focused on offense. Chris, I'll go to you first. What do you see from Houston's defense, in particular in that first half, where especially in the first part of the first half, they were really dominant. They looked really stellar against the Hawks.
Cougs, this Cougs team is more explosive in transition when they force turnovers and getting easy buckets. So that is going to be a difference for this year's team. So they can force steals, play the passing lanes, and get out and go much quicker and more effective than this team can. So than previous Cougs teams can. So that's going to be a difference for them. Just another option in the bag for them to go to score points. Transition, fast break points, beats in the low post now, mid-range game, 3-point shooting. 3-point shot may be the last thing that impacts for this team, and they'll need it sometimes this season. They're not going to go 1 for 20, most likely, ever again. 5 for 26 might be more common this here and there a little bit, but they still can beat you with offensive rebounding, points in the paint, transition buckets, steals, and buckets and fast break points. Different ways for this team to score because they're more versatile and they're deeper.
Yeah, like Chris just said, I think they're more athletic, specifically up front as well than they've been in a while, and I think that translates more fast break points. And I would like to see them actually play a little faster. I think that would be to their advantage whenever the opportunity presents itself. I love the way Jamal Sheard controls the tempo of the game, but I do think, like Chris just said, they probably is the more athletic team that we've seen in a while. And I think defensively, they just all on one accord. It's like, you use a football analogy, they like just blitz you like every single possession. They blitz you, and when it seems like you might have advantage, somebody is rotating, whether they're getting in position or they're reaching in, getting a deflection and everything. And so defensively, a lot of times their defense turned into offense, specifically today. because they would get a stop, would get a deflection, and it'll lead to a transition basket. And I think that's something that they should use to their advantage for sure, because they definitely is more athletic and depth. And we haven't even talked about Ramon Walker. I know Chris mentioned it a little bit, Ramon Walker doing what Ramon Walker does, but we really haven't talked in depth about what he's bringing. I know in our last one of our podcasts, I mentioned about how offensively I seen one that I thought he would take the next step, and it looks like he is doing that so far through 2 games.
And it's good to see. Excuse me, Andy.
You're good.
St. Joseph being young, and they have never. It's hard to simulate Cougs defense in practice.
Yeah.
Okay, if you've never seen it before, that's what that first half really was for them. They were just like deer in headlights completely. So second half, they adjusted to it, got used to it a little bit. They matched physicality, and that's one key to conference opponents. They see the Cougs once or twice a year, so they're used to that, and that's why conference games are more competitive for Houston, because the defensive style and physicality, they're used to it year in, year out.
Yeah, and the other thing I was going to add to both of your guys' points, like you mentioned, that athleticism. I think for the guards in particular, their quickness is something that, like you mentioned, we have Jawan Roberts, Jarvis Walker up front with the length, and then in particular, there was a couple of times today, especially when a St. Joseph player maybe would get trapped, whether it be in the post or in the corner. And they make a pass, and it just seems like, and maybe it's just me an observation through the first 2 games, but it seems like Houston's guards, I don't know if it's necessarily that they're quicker, but because of how veteran experienced all the guards are, they're doing a much better job at making the reads, just jumping at the ball. There's been a lot more times where I've seen Marcus Sasser, Tremont Mark, and I mean, Ramon Walker, give it to his credit. He's one of the players that have been able to get into the passing lanes and really anticipate passes that oppositions through the first 2 games are making once they are trapped, whether it be in the corners or, I mean, even off the screens whenever they jump on and double teams whenever they try to do screens.
Dan made a great point about Houston's closeout ability. They do a great. You very rarely see them on the perimeter go for pump fakes.
Yep.
They chop those feet and get right there in the jumper shooter's face. So I mean, it is just that's coaching and the players being used to it in the system and learning how to do it. Cougs defensive style.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's something that Kelvin Sampson's emphasized. He says the worst thing, or the thing he hates the most, is whenever a player fouls a jump shooter, and that's something that you see right there. Like you said, Chris, they do a great job at closing out, chopping their feet, and not letting, like you said, not biting for those pump fakes that oppositions do it. Now, the final player that we all talk about is Ramon Walker, who give credit to him. Coming into the season, like we all know the identity player he became for Houston, drawing charges. He had another one of those identity type plays, which ultimately didn't even lead to possession for Houston, but it was just absurd. There were 2 St. Joseph players. The ball was going out of bounds. It didn't really seem like Ramon Walker had a chance, but he outran both of the St. Joseph players, dove for the ball, and almost made a play. It hit off a St. Joseph player, and then it bounced back and hit Ramon Walker as he was sliding out of bounds. But that in and of itself, I mean, that just embodies what Ramon Walker brings to the table.
And you tweeted about that, and I don't know if we can do it because we're trying to do so much other things as the game's going on. But chart how many times the Cougs dive on the floor. I mean, I'm sure the staff does it, but if we keep track of it, man, because Ramon did it, Tremont did it, Jarvis did it, Marcus did it, everybody did it. You know, and probably at least twice on average. So that's what 9 guys play. That's 18 times right there, and that's probably just a low estimate of how many times the Cougs were diving on the floor throughout this ball game. I would hate to have to be a drinking game every time a Coug dives on the floor and take a drink, man, because we'd be just toe up from the floor up for that. But it's just a great job, Ramon Walker. That play he talked about, I think he started like half court and caught up with St. Joseph players and chased and just dove. Just almost was like a head first slide to get to the ball. So salute to him.
And I think that goes back into the intensity that Coach Sampson coaches with, not only I'm sure in practice, but also in the game, and they play with it. And Ramon, he just comes in with a ball of energy. I mean, we know the identity plays that he makes, but today he knocked down some jump shots, had a 4-point play, had an and one that was very impressive when he got fouled and made it with his left hand. And so if he could continue to develop his offensively and be a consistent shooter, man, I love to see where he's going to go. And just think about that. We're talking about depth Terrence haven't even had his coming out party yet, and I know it's going to be a game where he's going to have his game. I think Ramon is going to continue to develop, and so, man, I just love the way that this team, like Chris is saying, they can beat you in so many different ways, and it's only 2 games, but we can see there any given night. I feel like they can have any player that can probably lead them in scoring, whether it be J1, whether it be Jairus, whether it be Tremont or Marcus, or even Jamal on an even given night. We've seen nights where he can't miss a shot, and so, man, this team is so deep, and I just love the way that they all believe in one another and they play selfless basketball. There's no hero ball, even though Marcus gets all the recognition that he gets, and rightfully so. He never forces a shot. Like, I didn't see anywhere in the game where he like, dang, I got 7 points. Let me try to get it a little bit. He still moved the basketball and let the game come to him. And I think that all starts not only with Coach Sampson, but with the point guard play as well. I think you just move the basketball and give up good shots for great shots.
You know, Marcus has the ultimate green light because Coach Sampson trusts him, and he still doesn't force shots. So, you know, Jeff Perdue had a great comment. David Francis, big man, he'll get better throughout this season as a rim protector. That's another player who should develop and get better throughout this season. Like I said it earlier, and I think you guys agree, and I think fans too as well. Man, it's hard not to get overexcited about the potential of this team for this season.
Yep.
Absolutely, and that's that's pretty much going to do it for today's show. We'll be back. We'll be back tomorrow, Saturday, for Let's Rage Coogs, the football edition, as the football team takes Temple, and we'll see how the defense bounces back from that performance against SMU. But Houston, once again, final score, they defeat St. Joseph's 81-55 in Annapolis, part of the Veterans Classic. Ramon Walker led all scorers. He had a very strong offensive performance. He had 23 points, added in 8 rebounds, and Juwan Roberts was right up there with him with a 19.12 rebound double-double. Houston will be back Monday night at Fertitta Center against Oral Roberts. And Dayon, something you mentioned earlier in the show, where Houston hasn't really played, you know, the 2 teams they've played earlier, they haven't really had a guard that's posed a lot of challenges for Houston. Well, they're going to see that on Monday against Oral Roberts and Max Abmas, who has shown
it's pronounced Asmus. I don't know what that B symbol, whatever it is, but it's pronounced Asmus. And I was like, okay, whatever you say, Dad, whatever. But that's how you pronounce it. It's spelled Abmas, but it's pronounced Asmus. So
interesting. That's
go figure.
Well, I might have just butchered more than the broadcast guy just butchered Terrence Arsenal's name during the live.
He got better during the second half.
I wonder if he got a message to him about, because it's like, what do you say? Arsino.
He seemed hesitant.
He's not from the South because he's never heard that name before.
Yeah. But so Oral Roberts is going to be their next opponent. They actually lost their opening game. Another opponent that Houston's going to see later on down the road, St. Mary, 78-70. So that's going to be interesting. Houston, like I mentioned, they're going to see both of those teams down the road. But Oral Roberts, Chris, I'll go over to you first. Whether it be a takeaway from this game or what can you expect to see from Houston? I'm wondering, what will you be looking for in regards to Houston's 3rd game of the season?
And I haven't studied that game between Oral Roberts and St. Mary's, but I didn't see Max Asmus too much in the box score. So I'm not sure if he didn't play a lot, if he's injured, or because he makes a big difference, clearly, you know, because he led the league country in scoring like 2 seasons ago. He gets them up. He gets buckets. But without him, they're a very different team, because I really would like to see him going against Marcus Sasser and Jamal Shedd. And I think there'll be some NBA scouts in the building for that too as well on Monday. But Dayon touches on a point. I'm kind of curious when, I guess it'll be December, when the first net rankings come out. The Cougs really will they got to win their matchups against Oregon, Virginia, Alabama, St. Mary's, because, I mean, let's be honest, man, other than that, those 4 games, the non-conference schedule is not tough, you know, in terms of net rankings.
Yeah.
So, and there's still the cloud, the stigma overall about the American and teams in the American. Tulane, I think, will be better this year. But will the net rankings think of them that way? You know, so because we heard it a lot last season. Well, you know, Houston has not beaten the team, blah, 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 this. And So it won't be an
Yeah,
issue.
that was a big reason why
when
they
Big
ended
12
up being
happens.
ranked 5th.
Yeah. So I'm kind of curious. They got to win. I mean, I'm talking seeding purposes because the Cougs will be in a tournament, obviously.
Yeah.
But a loss to Bama, Oregon, Virginia, the marquee matchups for non-conference, how would that impact? How much of an impact would that have for the Cougs in net?
And to your point, Chris, remember last season they kind of went through the same thing where some of the teams that they beat didn't end up having good seasons, so that meant that net ranking kind of low.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, like you said, that's another good point, and they gotta beat those teams. And like you said, that's a great point. Yep.
Down. Final note. Anything you'll be looking for in particular in regards to Houston on Monday?
I just continue to look for them to continue to gel together as a team. Their depth, I feel like any given game, someone's going to have a breakout party, whether it be JVR, Ramon, or Terrence, or Tremont, or anyone. And so I'm just looking for them to continue to gel together, specifically defensively. I know that defense is good. I still think it can be a lot better because they had some laps today, and I think as the competition gets stiffer, I know Coach Sampson is going to coach them hard even more, especially when he looks at their rebound instead. So be looking out for the defense to see if they can just tighten up a little bit game by game and get 1% better each game.
And Andy, in case anybody's wondering, I think we know it, but there was not a Zoom post-game for us. So that's why you didn't see any post-game comments from Coach Sampson or any of the players, because there wasn't anything for us to give you guys. Let's Rage Coogs. That won't be an issue. Football Monday, Saturday, or football on Monday. So that's one of those. I think this might be one of the few times where we won't have a Zoom or road game. So just keep that in mind going forward. It wasn't because we didn't want to. We had nothing to give you. So that's what that is. But Monday's game will be on ESPN Plus. So let's keep that in mind as well.
ESPN exclusive. I'll take this time right now to plug in the Pod Slam and Jamma YouTube channel. Be sure to subscribe for really your one-stop shop for all things Houston Cougars football, men's basketball, and women's basketball. There's a couple of different clips just from throughout the week going back to Monday while everyone was in the World Series parade. Joseph Duarte, I, and Ryan Monceau, shout out. We were the only three that were in Dana Hogerson's press conference.
You one of the three? Okay.
Yes, we're celebrating the World Series parade. So big shout to us three. But obviously, of course, from throughout the week, availability from Kelvin Sampson, Jarvis Walker, from Tremont Mark, and we had Bria Patterson as well, and a couple of women's basketball players just throughout the week. So you one-stop shop for all stuff Houston Cougars football, men's basketball, and women's basketball. Chris, I'm gonna toss it over to you. Where can people find you? And of course, thank you for allowing us to use your platform and your YouTube channel here to stream Let's Rage Coogs on the Houston Roundball Review YouTube channel.
Oh, of course, man. And Twitter, you see right there, the HR Review, YouTube, Houston Roundball Review, same on Instagram, and even on TikTok, Houston Roundball Review on TikTok, which I got to start posting more clips on. But we'll have our next Folks Talking Sports with me, Andy, and James Mueller this Sunday, I think at 6 p.m. Central Time, talking about, we'll recap the weekend and preview Oral Roberts and probably talk some Big 12 news, Pac-12 news, other college sports news as well on Folks Talking Sports on our Twitter account at Folks Talk Sports, but also on the Houston Roundball Review on YouTube. So, Andy, once again, great job. Dan, once again, great job. And folks, if any of you are wondering, man, Chris and Dan were going heated. It's all love here, man. People, this is all love. This don't trip, nothing like that. We've known each other a long time. Okay, so it's all good. No hate, no animosity whatsoever. Much respect for him and Andy. So it's a great thing. Don't even, they're better. No, we weren't. None of that at all. Okay, nothing whatsoever. So I think, Dan, will you be good available tomorrow?
Of course, yeah, I'll be available. And like Chris just said, that's just conversation, man. We're just going back and forth. Sometimes we're not always going to agree, and that makes it better for a show. And so definitely nothing ill intention is there. And so that makes it just a better conversation. We can't agree on everything. And like Andy just said, Chris, thank you for allowing us to use your YouTube channel, of course. And thank you for Andy as well, allowing me to be partner with him for all the great work that he's doing. You can follow me on all social media at Dayon Dunlap. But can we get predictions for tomorrow for football from you guys as well before we go?
Oh,
what's the spread? Come on, Andy, you're supposed to know it off the top of your head, man. Come on, that's your thing.
I haven't checked. I can get it for you real quick. But honestly, I think it'll be a much closer game than whatever the spread is, just because of how good Temple is at being able to get pressure on the quarterback.
Cougs will win because they have to. Does that make sense? Yeah, that's where we are. So, based on what you find out of the spread, I might go a little further.
Okay, now I like that. I like Chris just said.
Wow, Houston's actually. Sorry, Dan, I didn't mean to cut you off, but Houston's actually favored by 20 points to beat Temple.
Ooh.
20-point favorites. I would take the under. Because again,
Cougs winning by
I think
14, 17 maybe, but ooh.
I think Temple's going to pose some problems defensively because they do lead the country when it comes to getting pressure and sacks on quarterbacks, and that's the offensive. Give credit to the offensive line. That hasn't really been the problem for Houston the last few, really since the Memphis game. It hasn't really been a problem for Houston, but Tune hasn't really faced much pressure. It'll be interesting to see that dynamic, and then obviously the story of the game is how does the defense bounce back from giving up 77 points against SMU. But now I'll toss it over to you. Didn't mean to cut you off.
No. I was just seconding what Chris said. Cougs will win because they have to. And I'm going to be looking forward to when they be past half. I know last game they kind of had to keep up, but what kind of running game will we see? Will Tajon Henry be back? I don't know. Dana's been hitting at it. Will we see Campbell? We didn't see him none last week. Will it be all Snead or what? And so I'm just going to be saying that with the offense could continue they play in defense, they got to step up. They got to bounce back.
Yeah, and that's going to do it for today's show. It seems like Tajon Henry might be good to go tomorrow. He tweeted that he'll be back, so that'll be something to keep an eye on. Once again, final score: Houston defeats St. Joseph's 81-55. That's going to do it. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll be back tomorrow.
Go Cougs.